The plan was a house of cards in a hurricane. Everyone knew it. There was no time for careful testing. Dr. Taeyeon and Park Daeyeon worked in a frantic, shared channel, their voices a stream of technical terms and short curses. The goal was not to merge the power systems neatly. It was to force them to discharge in one simultaneous, chaotic surge. The Horizon's damaged main communications array would act as the focusing dish, aiming the resulting blast of disruptive energy at the anchor point on Erebus 7. The timing is everything. Daeyeon grunted, his hands flying over the stone hauler's engineering console. If the surge is out of sync by even a microsecond, the feedback will cook our cores from the inside. It'll be a chain reaction of pretty explosions. On the horizon, Taeyeon nodded, his face slick with sweat in the dim light. I am creating a synchronization pulse. It will be a simple countdown. All ships must tie their emergency power dump to the final signal. The Horizon's array will activate on the same mark. We get one shot. While they worked, the others prepared for the storm. Lee Hanyul gathered the 4 other small, fast ships that had answered the call, 2 couriers, and 2 scouts. We don't shoot at the big one, she told them over the tactical channel. We make the little warship hate us. Buzz their sensors, fly close to their weapon ports, look like we're trying to board. Draw their point defense fire away from the linked ships. Stay unpredictable. If you get a target lock warning, you dive. No heroes. Kim Soyoung positioned her heavy mining cutters, the granite and the slab, between the forming power-linked group and the Cathari warship. Their hulls were thick, designed to withstand the impact of asteroid fragments. You are shields, she told her pilots. You turn your broadest side to the enemy. You take the hits so the others don't have to. Her utility tug, the winch, maneuvered behind them, its powerful tractor beam ready to try to shove incoming plasma bolts off course. A task akin to deflecting a meteor with a spoon. Choi Jung, in the whisper, floated at the edge of the engagement zone. His ship was a nerve center of passive sensors. The warship is powering its primary weapons, his calm voice reported. They are focusing on the horizon and the vessels clustering around it. They have identified the grouping as the primary threat. The distraction wing must act now. Go time, Hanyul said. Her swift shot forward, engines flaring. The other small ships followed, breaking formation like a scatter of sparks. The Cathari warship, elegant and lethal, took the bait. From its smooth surface, dozens of small, fast-tracking turrets emerged. They swiveled and fired streams of luminous violet plasma. Space lit up with deadly color. Hanyul twisted her ship, feeling the heat of a near-miss wash over her shields. She rolled and dove, leading a dance of death. One of the couriers wasn't fast enough. A plasma bolt speared its engine. It flashed once, silently, and became a cloud of expanding debris. Hanyul didn't have time to mourn. She screamed a curse and flew even closer to the warship's hull, her shadow flickering across its dark surface. Power link at 70%. Daeyeon called out. Across the network, engineers on a dozen different ships rerouted energy, bypassing safeties. The stone hauler trembled as its old reactor was pushed into the red. The Cathari commander understood the tactic. A larger, secondary battery on the warship swiveled away from the buzzing gnats and took aim at the clustered ships around the horizon. A bolt of energy, far larger than the point defense fire, lanced out. It struck the granite, Kim Soyoung's lead cutter. The ship shuddered violently. A hole the size of a shuttle bay was torn in its side, atmosphere and debris vomiting into the void. It was dead in space. No! Soyoung shouted, but her voice was pure iron. Slab, hold position. Winch, tractor on that next bolt, now. Another massive bolt fired. The winch's tractor beam, A visible cone of blue energy latched onto the plasmablast. The tug shook as if struck by a giant. The beam managed to tug the bolt a few degrees off course. It missed the stone hauler by meters and exploded against a small asteroid in the distance. Link at 90%. We are overloading. We have to fire soon. Taiyan's voice was tense. On the Horizon's bridge, Captain Mingho watched the carnage. Another small civilian ship, a scout, vanished in a flash of light. The slab was taking hit after hit, its thick armor glowing red-hot in spots. These people were dying for his ship, for a plan that might not work. Mingho to all vessels. Prepare for final synchronization. On my mark. 10 seconds. The countdown began, echoing in every cockpit. 9, 8. The Cathari warship, frustrated by the persistent distractions and sensing the building power surge, changed tactics. It launched no weapons. Instead, a series of sleek, dark pods shot from its underside. They burst open. What emerged was not a missile or a drone, but something organic and silent. They were creatures of polished black chitin and sharp, articulated limbs, with no visible eyes or engines. They moved through the vacuum with an unnatural, skittering grace, as if swimming through space itself. They made no sound, emitted no energy signature beyond a faint, cold aura. What are those? Ji-Woo breathed, her sensors struggling to track them. Hunter-killers. Choi Jun's voice came, sharp with alarm. Biological drones. They track by disruption, by movement, by the heat of a reactor. They are the silence that eats sound. The creatures moved with terrifying speed. One latched onto the hull of the remaining scout ship. It didn't blast it. It simply pierced the hull with needle-like limbs and seemed to melt inside. The ship's lights died instantly. It drifted, utterly dead. Another targeted the winch. So-Young saw it coming. She fired her tug's weak lasers. The bolts passed through the creature as if it weren't fully there. It attached itself to the bridge viewport. There was a horrible screech of rending metal, and then the connection to the winch went silent. 4. 3, Mingho continued, his heart a drum in his chest. A hunter-killer skittered toward the stone hauler. Dayan saw it on his external camera. "Oh, you ugly thing," he muttered. He couldn't move. His ship was a critical part of the power link, locked in place. He braced himself. Before it could strike, a blast of raw, unfocused plasma washed over it. It was not a precise shot. It was the dying vent of the slab's main reactor, fired by its pilot as a final act. The creature writhed and shattered into frozen pieces. The slab, its duty done, went dark. 2, 1, mark. On the mark, Park Dayan slammed his fist onto the final override. On 11 other ships, engineers did the same. On the Horizon, Taeyon activated the array. For a second, nothing happened. Then, space around the linked ships. A visible wave, not of light but of distorted reality, a storm of conflicting energies and wrong frequencies, erupted from the Horizon's array. It was not a beam. It was a howl, a sonic boom of pure power. It was ugly, jagged. An immense dotted shot across the distance and struck the precise point on Erebus 7 where the Cathari anchor beam was drilling into the crust. The effect was immediate. The clean, violet beam from the warship flickered violently like a faulty lamp. On the surface of the planetoid, the ground where it touched began to fracture, glowing with uncontrolled energy. The Cathari world carrier, the mountain-sized harvester, shuddered. A deep, groaning vibration echoed through space, felt rather than heard. The smooth patterns of light on its hull scrambled into frantic, chaotic flashes. It was like a sleeper gripped by a sudden, violent nightmare. The anchor was broken, but the Cathari were not finished. Their warship, enraged, fired everything it had at the now powerless, vulnerable cluster of human ships. And the remaining hunter-killer drones, uncontrolled and mindless, continued their silent, deadly work, skittering toward the horizon and the stone hauler. The plan had worked. They had woken the giant from its mooring. Now they were broken and adrift before its rage, and the true, silent beasts were still among them. Silence returned, but it was a silence of aftermath, thick and heavy. The linked power surge had worked, but at a terrible cost. The civilian ships were dead in space, their reactors burned out, their systems dark. The horizon was powerless once more. The Cathari warship, wounded in its purpose, turned its fury upon them, weapons charging for a final cleansing volley. And the silent hunter-killer drones, those skittering things of chitin and cold, moved through the drifting wrecks, seeking the heat of life to extinguish Dot on the horizon's bridge. Captain Minho watched one of the creatures crawl over the hull toward the main viewport. Its needle limbs tapped against the reinforced transparasteel, searching for a weakness. There were no more tricks, no more power. He looked at Lieutenant Ji Woo, at Dr. Tae-yun, at Ensign Yuna. He gave a small, grim nod. It was over. Ensign Yuna, however, was not looking at the creature. Her eyes were fixed on her dead navigation panel, where a secondary screen, powered by a separate backup battery, still flickered with long-range sensor data. It showed the surface of Erebos 7. "Captain," she whispered, her voice strange with awe. Look, the planetoid was responding. The disruptive wave from their ships had not just broken the Cathari anchor. It had traveled deep into the crust, a violent shock wave passing through the networks of crystalline formations that the researchers had called simple life. They were not simple. They were dormant. The fractures on Erebus 7's surface began to glow, not with the harsh violet of Cathari energy, but with a deep, pulsing gold. Then the ground erupted, not with rock and dust, but with shapes. They were massive, larger than the warship, beings of living crystal and condensed light. They unfolded from the planetoid like giants rising from a deep sleep. Their forms were shifting, geometric, beautiful, and terrifying. They made no sound, but space itself seemed to vibrate with their presence. They were the true beasts. They did not move like ships. They moved like thoughts given form, sliding through the vacuum as if it were water. They perceived the battlefield not as a conflict of tribes, but as a violation of equilibrium. The Cathari energy, the harvesting signal, the violent disruption, it was all a poison in their home. And they saw the source of the poison dot, the first crystalline entity, reach the Cathari warship. It did not attack. It simply enveloped part of the ship's stern in a shimmering field of golden light. Where the light touched, the warship's sleek, dark hull did not melt or explode. It changed. It reconfigured, breaking down and reforming into inert, harmless silicon dust that scattered into the void. The warship tried to turn its weapons. They fired, but the bolts passed through the golden light and the crystalline form without effect. The entity was not entirely in their dimension, not entirely in their understanding of physics. Panic, clear and digital, finally bled from the Cathari vessel. It tried to retreat, to warp away. A second crystalline being drifted into its path. A tendril of light, delicate as a thread, touched the warship's bridge. The entire section of the ship simply ceased to be complex. It became a static, frozen sculpture of its own base elements, dead and silent. The hunter-killer drones met a similar fate. As they skittered toward the human ships, threads of golden light lanced from the planetoid, spearing each one. The drones vibrated violently and then dissolved into clouds of inert particles, their sinister, silent programming wiped away as if it had never existed. All human activity had stopped. Every survivor on every broken ship watched. Lee Haniel, floating in her dead swift, pressed her face against the canopy. Park Dae-yeon sat perfectly still in the stone hauler's pilot chair, his mouth open. Kim So-young, on the crippled but alive winch, clutched the arms of her chair, tears of shock and relief cutting tracks through the grime on her face. Choi Jun simply nodded slowly, as if a deep suspicion about the universe had just been confirmed that the largest of the crystalline beings now turned its attention to the Cathari world carrier. The giant harvester, destabilized and confused, was trying desperately to re-establish its anchor, to flee. It glowed with frantic internal light. The crystalline entity approached it. This was not a skirmish. This was an act of cosmic correction. The being extended a lattice of light that wrapped around the world carrier. There was no explosion. Instead, the carrier's own violent, unstable energy was turned against it, folded inward by the golden field. The mountain of dark technology shuddered once, twice. Then, with a silent flash that left after images on every retina, it was forced back into the unstable rift from which it had emerged. The rift sealed shut behind it, leaving no trace. The devourer had been unmade dot as suddenly as they had emerged. The crystalline beings paused. They seemed to survey the space around their world, their perceptions sweeping over the broken human ships. For a terrifying moment, Minho feared they would be next just more complex clutter to be cleaned away. But the beings simply withdrew. They retracted their luminous forms, sinking back into the glowing fractures of Erebus 7. The golden light faded. The planetoid returned to its gray, silent state. The true beasts had dealt with the infection. The rest was not their concern. The profound silence that followed was broken by the crackle of a long-range communication channel. It was the United Galactic Council fleet finally arriving. "This is Admiral Vance of the UGC Sentinel to any vessels in the Erebus 7 sector. We are detecting massive residual energy and significant debris. Please identify." Captain Minho found his voice, transmitting from the horizon's last trickle of backup power. "This is Captain Lee Minho of the UGC Horizon. We are here. Survivors are across multiple civilian vessels. The immediate threat has been neutralized. It took hours for the recovery to begin." Shuttles from the fleet swarmed, collecting the living and the dead from the broken civilian ships. Medics boarded the horizon. As Minho was helped from his chair, he saw Lee Haniel being pulled from the Swift, waving off assistance. He saw Park Dae-yeon arguing with a council engineer about how to save his ship's reactor. He saw Kim So-young, her arm in a sling, directing rescuers to her surviving crew on the winch. He saw Choi Jun, standing quietly by his old whisper, speaking softly with the intelligence officer. Later, in the infirmary of the Sentinel, the Admiral stood before them. He had seen the sensor logs, the impossible recordings. The Council will want a full debrief. "What you describe. These crystal entities. They were here first," Choi Jun said simply. "We were just noise in their house. The Cathari were afire. They put the fire out." The Admiral turned to Minho. "Your distress call." It was answered by civilians. Minho looked at the faces of the people who had come. They were tired, bruised, mourning friends. They were not soldiers. "They answered," he said. "When the rules failed, they came. They fought with mining lasers and tractor beams, and the power of their ship's reactors. They didn't fight the beast. They broke its leash. And then," he glanced out a viewport at the quiet bulk of Erebus 7. The older, quieter things handled the rest. The Admiral was silent for a long time. The galaxy felt suddenly larger and stranger and more dangerous. But also, in the stubborn, reckless courage of the people in the room, more hopeful dot in the dark of space, Erebus 7 was once again a quiet, gray rock. But in the shadows of its crystal caves, deep in its heart, the giants slept again. They had been awakened by a cacophony of desperate beings. They had taken note. And across the galaxy, in the silent depths of other ancient sleeping worlds, other presences stirred, just a little, in their long, long slumber. They had called for backup. They had gotten a reminder. In an ancient galaxy, sometimes you wake giants. And sometimes you find you are not the most dangerous creatures in the dark. The Cathari warship disengaged from the horizon with a fluid, disdainful motion. The remaining energy tethers retracted like the tentacles of some deep-sea creature. Its smooth, purple hull turned slowly, bringing its main array of weapons to bear on the chaotic swarm of human civilian ships. The brief message had been clear. They were insects to be swatted, not opponents to be fought. Inside the dead bridge of the horizon, the crew watched the silent dance on their backup screens. Captain Minho felt a knot of despair tighten. The civilians had bought them minutes, nothing more. Now they would die for it. "Get me a channel to those ships," he ordered Ji-Woo, his voice rough. Lieutenant Ji-Woo worked quickly on an auxiliary panel, her face pale in the emergency lights. "Open channel, Captain. This is Captain Lee Ming-ho of the UGC Horizon. Your actions are brave, but you cannot fight that ship. Break off and retreat. Save yourselves." That is an order. He hated the words as he said them. The response came not from the civilian ships, but from the alien vessel. The same cold, translated voice filled the horizon's bridge as well. The directive stands. Withdraw or be erased. The primary objective continues. This system will be purified. A new signal, tight and focused, shot from the warship toward the surface of Erebus 7. On the Horizon Science Station, Dr. Kim Tae-yun saw the data spike. "Captain, they're not just signaling the planet. They're projecting a sustained energy pattern into the crust. It's an anchor signal. An anchor for what?" Minho asked, moving to look over his shoulder. Before Tae-yun could answer, the answer began to form in space beside the Cathari warship. Reality itself seemed to tear. A rift of violent purple and black energy spiraled open, silent and terrifying. Through it, something began to emerge. It was vast, so vast it made the warship look like a child's toy. A curve of dark crystalline hull, marked with swirling patterns of cold light, slid into their reality. It was not a ship in any human understanding. It was a mobile world, a planet killer. The Cathari World Carrier. On the bridge, Ensign Eunice simply whispered, "Oh no." In the civilian ships, the sight brought all motion to a halt. Lee Hanyul's hands froze on the Swift's controls. Park Dae-yeon let out a low, stunned curse. Kim So-young, on the bridge of her lead cutter, felt her breath catch. Only Choi-jung, in his sensor-packed whisper, spoke. His old voice was filled with a grim recognition. "A harvester. I've seen the patterns before, in old reconnaissance files from dead colonies. They don't conquer. They clean. They sterilize." Aboard the Horizon, Tae-yun was arriving at the same horrifying conclusion, but with scientific precision. He pulled up the scans of the energy residue from the outpost, comparing it to the power signature of the emerging world carrier. It's a match. A perfect harmonic match. Captain, they weren't just killing the researchers. They were preparing the site. This energy? It's a biochemical solvent on a planetary scale. It breaks down complex organic life and advanced technology, reduces it to base energy and raw materials. Then that. He pointed to the screen, showing the growing immensity of the carrier. Processes it. Feeds on it. The outpost scientists must have discovered what the residue really was. Minho understood. This wasn't war. It was pest control on a cosmic scale. "And we're the pests," he said softly. The world carrier finished its emergence. The rift sealed shut behind it. The carrier hung beside its warship escort, a silent mountain of terrible purpose. Then it began to glow from deep within. A low, sub-audible hum vibrated through the hull of the Horizon and into the bones of every person in the nearby ships. A new, wider broadcast came from the Cathari commander. The harvest of this sector begins with this fragment. The signal will call others. You have until the primary beam activates to leave the area. Any remaining biological or technological complexity will be assimilated. They were being given a chance to run, to watch from a distance as Erebus 7, and then likely the nearest human colonies, were consumed. On the general channel, the civilian ships erupted in panicked chatter. Some voices argued for immediate flight. Others shouted in anger and helplessness. INHO made a decision. He no longer had a ship to command, but he had a responsibility. Ji Woo, patch me directly to the lead civilian vessels. All of them. A conference channel. A moment later, he was looking at 4 faces on a cracked screen. Lee Hanyul, her eyes wide with adrenaline. Park Dae-yeon, his expression set in stubborn defiance. Kim Soyoung, her face a mask of focused calculation. And Choi Jun, whose eyes held a deep, weary knowledge. You should go, Minho said without preamble. You have done more than anyone could ask. This is now an extinction-level event. Your duty is to survive and warn the colonies. Dayen shook his head. Warn them of what? That? They won't believe us. And by the time they do, that thing will have eaten 3 more systems. He's right, Soyoung said. Running just delays the end. We have to stop it here. With what? Hanyul asked, throwing her hands up. Mining lasers and tractor beams? We tickled the little one. That big one won't even feel us. It was Choi Jun who spoke next, his voice cutting through the frustration. We do not attack the beast. We attack the tether. He shared his sensor data. Look at the energy link between the warship and the world carrier. And look at the anchor signal going into the planetoid. They are the same. The carrier is not fully stable in our space. It is being held here, phase-anchored, by that beam from the warship into Erebus 7's crust. Sever the anchor, and the carrier becomes unmoored. It risks being lost in the dimensional rift. A spark of hope, thin and desperate, flickered in the dark. Tae-yeon, listening in from behind Minho, leaned forward. He's correct. The anchor is a precise resonant frequency. It's delicate. Overload it, disrupt the harmony, and the entire structure becomes unstable. Can the Horizon do that? Soyoung asked. Minho looked at Tae-yeon, who shook his head. Our main reactor is dead. Our power core is damaged. We could not generate a fraction of the energy needed, even if we knew the exact frequency to disrupt. A slow smile spread across Park Dae-yeon's face. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of an engineer looking at a pile of junk and seeing a solution. You don't have the power. But look around. He gestured out his viewport at the collection of civilian ships. We've got 12 ships out here, each with a different kind of power plant. Fusion, pulsed fission, even old-style plasma cyclers on the mining cutters. All out of sync. All noisy. What if we link them? Not to be in harmony, but to create the biggest, ugliest, most chaotic burst of noise you've ever heard. A cannon of wrong notes. Tae-yeon's eyes lit up. A resonance cacophony, yes. If we can synchronize a power surge from all ships and focus it through the Horizon's damaged, but still large communication array, we could blast the anchor signal with interference. It would be like screaming into a singer's ear. It might break their concentration completely. The plan was insane. It required linking the incompatible power systems of a dozen different ships without them blowing each other up. It required the horizon to act as a focusing lens. And it required the Cathari to sit and watch them do it. They will not just watch, Minho said. The warship will stop us. Lee Hanyul straightened in her seat. So we give them something else to look at. A really annoying something else. The swift and any other fast, small ships. We draw their fire. We make them chase us. We are the distraction. Kim Soyoung nodded. My utility tug is slow, but its tractor beam is powerful. I can use it to shield the linked ships, try to deflect some of the incoming fire. My cutters, they can try to physically block shots. They're built to take hits from rock shrapnel. They all looked at each other across the light years of digital space. It was a terrible plan. It was a plan of noise, distraction, and sacrifice. It was all they had. Captain Minho felt the weight of his rank, but he also saw the determination in the faces of these civilians. They were not under his command. They were volunteers. He gave a single, slow nod. Then we try. We will coordinate from here. Daeun C., you and Taeyun work out the power link. We have little time. As the connection ended, the world carrier internal glow brightened. A deep, throbbing pulse began to emanate from it, aimed at the silent surface of Erebus 7. The harvest was beginning. On the horizon, in the Swift, in the stone hauler, and the mining ships. People began to move. They were not a fleet. They were a desperate, makeshift weapon, hoping to break a tether and topple a giant. The vast emptiness of space was never truly silent. Aboard the starship Horizon, the constant, soft hum of its engines and the faint beeping of consoles were a familiar kind of quiet. Captain Lee Minho stood on the command bridge, his hands resting calmly behind his back. He was a steady man, his face showing the calm focus of someone who followed the rules because they usually kept people alive. The ship was on a routine patrol at the very edge of the United Galactic Council's mapped territory. It was peaceful, almost boring work dot at the communication station. Lieutenant Park Ji-woo adjusted her headset. She was young, with sharp eyes that missed very little. A small repeating signal had been appearing on the edge of her scans for the last hour. It was weak, like a whisper against a strong wind. Captain, she said, her voice clear in the quiet room. I'm picking up a repeating automated signal. Source is the planetoid designated Erebus 7. It matches a council distress pattern. Minho turned. Priority? Low at first, but it's been repeating without change for 53 minutes. No voice, just the automated beacon. Ji-woo's fingers danced over her screen. The research outpost there has 5 staff. They're studying non-sentient crystalline formations. Their last scheduled check-in was 4 days ago. On the other side of the bridge, Dr. Kim Taeyun looked up from his science station. He was a careful man, a xenobiologist who preferred observing life, not rushing toward potential danger. Erebus 7's environment is stable but dull. The crystals are, by all previous reports, as lively as rocks. A system malfunction is the most likely cause. Ensign Choi Yuna, the navigator, chimed in without being asked. It was a habit Minho tolerated, because she was usually right. The Horizon is the closest vessel, Captain. We can be in orbit in 3 hours at standard speed. Minho considered for a moment. Protocol was clear. A repeating, unanswered distress signal required investigation. Set course for Erebus 7, Ensign. Standard approach. Let's go see why their comms are broken. The horizon cut smoothly through the dark. As the gray-brown sphere of Erebus 7 grew larger in the main viewer, the mood on the bridge shifted. Ji-woo frowned. I'm trying to hail the outpost directly. No response. But the beacon is definitely coming from the surface. Then she added, quieter, the signal strength is wrong. It's the right code, but the carrier wave is glitching, like it's being played back on damaged equipment. Taeyan leaned forward, studying his own screens. Surface scans are coming in. I'm reading the outpost structure. Life signs scanners are inconclusive. There's interference. Some kind of energy residue all over the site. Visual on the outpost, Yuna announced, putting the image on the main screen. The room went still. The research dome was not just damaged. It was torn open. One side looked like it had been peeled back by a giant, careless hand. The landing pad was scorched and empty. No lights shone from within the wreckage. Take us to low orbit. Full sensor sweep, Minot ordered, his voice tighter now. No signs of ships? None on scans, Captain, Yuna confirmed. Clean space around the planetoid. Prepare a shuttle. I'll lead a team down. Taeyan, you're with me. Ji-woo, keep trying to raise anyone. Yuna, you have the bridge. If anything even looks strange, you pull us up immediately. The shuttle ride down was tense. The surface of Erebus 7 was a jagged landscape of dark rock and sharp, pale crystal formations that caught the light of the distant sun. As they landed near the broken dome, the silence was heavy. Minho and Taeyan, suited up, stepped out with 2 security officers. The air was still and cold. The damage was worse up close. It was not an explosion. It looked like something had physically ripped through the compound. They found no bodies. They found no signs of a fight with weapons, no laser scorches, no projectile holes. Just twisted metal and deep, singular scratches in the hardened floor material. Inside what was left of the main lab, a computer terminal was still powered, its screen cracked. Taeyan managed to access the last log entries. The final one was a video file. The face of a young researcher, her eyes wide with a fear that was more than panic. It was confusion, filled the screen, the shadows. They move against the stars. We thought it was a sensor ghost, but they're here. On the surface. They don't show up right on scans. They're quiet. A silence that eats sound. Don't trust the emptiness. They're in the empt. The recording ended abruptly, not with a crash, but with a simple stop, as if the power to that one device had been cleanly severed. Shadows that move? Minho muttered. Silence that eats sound? It sounded like the ramblings of someone losing their mind. But the ripped open base was very real. Captain, Taeyan said, his voice hushed over the suit radio. He was looking at a reading on his portable scanner. This energy residue. It's everywhere. It's not radiation. It's more like a fingerprint. A very advanced, very foreign energy signature. And it's fresh. A call came from the shuttle pilot. Captain, the horizon is reporting strange energy fluctuations in high orbit. Faint, but multiple. They keep appearing and disappearing. We're coming back up, Minho said. Now, as their shuttle lifted off, Minho looked down at the ruined outpost. A deep, cold feeling settled in his stomach. This wasn't an accident or equipment failure. Something had come here, something that left no trace but ruin and a vague, terrifying energy dot back on the horizon's bridge. The mood was grim. Ji-woo was tracking the flickering energy signatures. They're not natural. They're moving. Pattern suggests. A scanning formation. Go to alert status. Ready the defensive systems, Minho ordered. Plot a course out of here, Yuna. We've seen enough. We need to report this. It was then that space itself, directly in front of the horizon, seemed to bend and shimmer. Like a ripple on a pond clearing, a ship revealed itself. It was huge, easily twice the size of the horizon. Its design was like nothing in the council databases. Sleek, elegant, and cruel-looking, all smooth curves and sharp edges. It was a deep, dark purple that seemed to drink in the starlight. No hail came. No message. Without warning, a lance of brilliant violet energy shot from the alien ship. It struck the horizon's shields, which flared a blinding white before dropping 20% on the first hit. Evasive action. Minho shouted. Return fire. Open a channel. They're not responding to hails. Ji-Woo yelled over the sudden blare of alarms. Yuna threw the ship into a hard turn. The Horizon's own plasma cannons fired, their bright bolts streaking toward the alien vessel. They impacted on a shimmering barrier that barely rippled. Their attack did nothing. The alien ship fired again and again. Each strike hammered the horizon like a giant's fist. Shield readings plummeted. Consoles sparked. The lights flickered. Shields at critical. Hull integrity failing on decks 4 and 5. An officer yelled. Minho gripped his chair. They couldn't outrun it. They couldn't fight it. They were going to be destroyed, and no one would ever know what happened here, or what that thing was. His training took over. There was one last protocol. Ji-Woo. Initiate a full spectrum emergency burst. All frequencies, maximum power. Send our location, our logs, everything we have on that ship and the outpost. Do it now. Ji-Woo's hands flew across her console. Transmitting. The burst is away. A final massive blast from the alien ship shook the horizon to its bones. The main lights died, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency strips. The hum of the engines sputtered and went silent. The console beeps faded. The only sounds were the creak of strained metal and the panicked breathing of the crew. On the viewer, the alien warship hung against the stars, silent and victorious. Then, smaller shapes detached from it boarding crafts. Gliding toward the powerless horizon. Captain Lee Minho sat in his dead command chair, staring at the approaching crafts. The emergency burst was a tiny shout into a vast, uncaring galaxy. He could only hope someone was listening. The emergency burst from the UGC horizon was not a polite call for help. It was a raw, digital scream, blasted across every communication frequency known to humanity. It was a burst of data containing the ship's final moments, terrifying images of the sleek alien attacker, scans of the strange energy signature, and the haunting final log from Erebus 7. This scream tore through the silent highways of space, reaching official channels, and more importantly, the cluttered, unofficial bands monitored by those who lived in the dark between the stars. On the edge of a lonely asteroid field, Lee Hanyul was elbow deep in the wiring of her ship's secondary thruster. Her small scout ship, the Swift, was built for speed and silence, not comfort. A jarring priority override alarm blared from her cockpit console, making her jump and bump her head. Cursing, she scrambled inside. The official council alert marker flashed, but it was the raw data feed that caught her eye, a civilian access relay of the Horizon's distress call. She saw the alien ship. She saw the Horizon's shields fail. She saw the coordinates. Erebus 7 was a week away at top speed for a military ship. For the Swift, pushing its limits, it was 4 days. Hanyul didn't think about the council fleet. She thought about the people on that ship right now, with that thing. Her hands were moving before her mind had fully decided, plotting a brutal, fuel-guzzling course dot in a bustling minor trade orbital. Park Dae-yeon was arguing with a parts dealer over the price of a shield emitter. His ship, the Stone Hauler, was a bulky freighter that had seen better decades. It was slow, ugly, and thanks to his constant tinkering, surprisingly tough. The distress ping buzzed on his wrist unit. He glanced at it, ready to ignore another bureaucratic alert. Then he saw the simple text header, UGC Vessel Horizon, boarding imminent, any assistance. He stopped talking. Dayan had served 5 years in the engineering course. He knew what boarding imminent meant. He threw a stack of credits at the stunned parts dealer, grabbed the emitter, and ran for his dock. The stone hauler was not built for rescue, but it was built to take a beating. Maybe, he thought, he could get in the way. Kim Soyoung was in the middle of a conference call with her asteroid mining cooperative. They were discussing yield quotas when the emergency broadcast sliced through their secure line. As the head of the co-op, her first duty was to her people and their ships. The screen split, showing the alien vessel's attack. A deep quiet fell over the call. "That's a kill shot," one of her pilots whispered. Soyoung stared at the coordinates. They were mining in the next system over. 3 days away. "The Council will handle it," another voice said. Soyoung thought of her brother, who served on a border cutter. She thought of the empty silence from the outpost and the logs. "The Council is days behind," she said firmly. "We're closer. We have heavy cutters and tractor rigs. We're not soldiers, but we know how to move rock and energy. Plot a course. All voluntary. Anyone who doesn't want to go, cover their shift." She ended the call. 4 of her 7 ships signaled they were with her. Choi Jun heard the signal because he listened to the dark. Living alone in a retrofitted sensor outpost near the galactic rim, his job was to watch for natural phenomena. His equipment was old, but extremely sensitive. The horizon's burst was a spike of pure panic in his readings. He played back the attached visual data, his old eyes narrowing. The ship design was wrong. All wrong. It spoke of a technology that didn't care about being seen, only about being effective. He saw the boarding crafts. He had been reconnaissance long ago. He knew what happened next to a boarded crew. June looked around his small, quiet home. He had left that life behind. But the signal was a human signal. With a sigh that seemed to come from his bones, he powered up his old, fast courier ship, the Whisper. It had no weapons, but it could see things others couldn't, and it could get there fast. Over the next days, a strange and scattered fleet began to converge. There was no coordination, no admiral. They came alone or in pairs, pushing their engines. A mismatched group of lives, connected only by the shared scream on their comms. They arrived at Erebos 7 to a chilling sight. The horizon hung dead in space, dark and powerless. The terrifying alien warship, the Cathari vessel, was docked with it like a monstrous leech. They could see small, sleek shapes moving from the warship into the human vessel. The boarding was underway. Haniel in the Swift arrived first. She saw the scale of the enemy ship and felt a wave of cold fear. Her little ship was a bug next to it. She opened a general channel, her voice tight. "This is Independent Scout Swift to any human vessels. The horizon is being boarded. That warship is active. Ideas?" Dayan's stone hauler lumbered into view next. "Ideas? We can't shoot that thing. Our pop guns will just make it mad." He studied the scene. "Look at those boarding tethers. They're like energy tubes connecting the ships. We cut those, we slow them down." Soyoung's small flotilla arrived then. 2 heavy mineral cutters and a utility tug. Her voice was calm on the channel. "Cutting is a good start. My cutters can slice through asteroid iron. Maybe we can snip those tethers. My tug has a powerful tractor beam. It's for moving ore pods, but I can try to push debris into their path, mess up their approach." Before they could plan further, a new voice, calm and old, came through. Choi Jun in the Whisper. "The warship's point defense sensors are focused on the horizon and the space directly around it. Their scan pattern has a blind spot low and behind their stern. They are not considering us a threat." "Then let's use that," Haniel said, a plan forming. "I'm fast and small. I'll draw their attention if they do look." You bigger ships, move in where the old man says. Cut the tethers. Push junk at them. Make a nuisance of yourselves. What happened next was not a battle. It was a riot. Haniel zipped her Swift in a wide, annoying circle, firing her weak civilian-grade lasers at the warship's hull. They did no damage, but they made little sparkling impacts. As predicted, a few of the warship's smaller turrets turned to track her. She dove away, leading them on a chase dot in that moment. Soyan's cutters moved in. Their industrial mining lasers, designed to slice through cubic meters of rock, fired. The brilliant blue beams connected with the glowing energy tethers. The tethers didn't explode. They fizzled and snapped, severing the connection between the warship and the horizon. 1 and 2, then 3. Daeon, meanwhile, used the stone hauler's heavy-duty tractor beam. He grabbed a large, jagged piece of debris from the ruined outpost that was orbiting nearby. With a grunt of effort from his ship, he hurled the chunk of metal and rock toward the warship's main sensor array. It wouldn't breach shields, but it forced the big ship to adjust, to fire its own weapons to destroy the incoming garbage. June didn't fire at all. He guided them, his voice a soft murmur. Their starboard shield emitter is fluctuating, where the third tether was cut. The utility tug, Soyang Sai, focus your tractor push there. Not to damage, just to distort. Soyang's tug fired its beam, a visible pulse of energy that slammed into the warship's shield at the weak point June identified. The shield shimmered violently, and a wave of disruptive feedback seemed to ripple across the warship's surface. For a second, its lights dimmed. On the bridge of the disabled horizon, Captain Mino and his crew watched their external screens in stunned disbelief. They saw the small, ragged ships buzzing around the giant enemy. They saw mining lasers cutting tethers. They saw a freighter throwing space junk. They saw the elegant alien warship actually pause, its boarding operation disrupted by what must have looked like a swarm of irritating insects. A new, clean signal cut through the general channel. It was from the alien warship. A voice, translated by their systems, echoed in the cockpits of all the human ships. It was cold, devoid of any emotion. You are not a military force. You are interference. Cease or be removed. Lee Haniel answered for all of them. She switched her channel to open, so the aliens and the horizon could hear. Her voice was bright with defiance and fear. You're boarding our people. That makes it our business. The alien ship went silent. Then it began to retract its remaining tethers. It was not leaving. It was turning its full attention toward the scattered civilian ships. The true beasts of the galaxy had been interrupted. Now they were annoyed.